Moving on to issue number 6 on the homeless. I would like to thank you for the information provided in the report and in the responses to our list of issues. I appreciate that the federal government is acknowledging that criminalization of people living on the street for everyday activities such as eating, sleeping, sitting in particular areas and the like raises serious human rights concerns. I appreciate that the government is sending out a strong message that alternative approaches to deal with this problem need to be developed. I also appreciate steps taken by federal authorities, including in particular the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. However, in line with what I just said about federalism, I really wonder whether your efforts are effective enough. There are ample reports about how criminalization of the homeless is discriminatory, how, as stressed by several UN special rapporteurs and also by federal agencies, how such criminalization often raises concerns of cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment. What is the federal government doing to effectively stop such criminalization? Can you tell us about the impact of measures already taken? Do you already provide or do you plan to provide incentives for decriminalization? Do you plan to withdraw funding for local authorities that continue to criminalize the homeless in a discriminatory way, in a way that may amount to inhuman treatment, degrading treatment? Do you plan to sanction criminalization policies? Or are your activities really limited just to sensitizing local authorities, something very important but probably not sufficient?
We've made extraordinary strides in the United States in reducing homelessness. I'm addressing Mr. Kalin's question about criminalization of homelessness, and I've been asked to address that because I'm on the United States Interagency Council for Homelessness, and I appreciate the very important question. We have worked really hard over the last 5 years in the Obama administration to address homelessness. We've created more than 50,000 new units of housing in the United States for homelessness. We've made extraordinary strides. We have also taken a firm position that criminalization is not a solution to the homelessness problem. We have come up with several best practices recently through the Council's work to try to find ways to address the homelessness problem, the criminalization problem. One of them is prevention. One of the things we've realized we need to do is create better systems of care for the homeless, including partnerships between housing agencies and social service agencies so that we can connect people with the needs that they have before they become homelessness. We've also realized that we need better collaboration between law enforcement and behavioral health and social service providers. So we need to train our police officers with specialized crisis intervention techniques so that they know how to get homelessness addressed, so that we can turn people into people we're providing services to rather than nonviolent offenders. And particularly in nonviolent offenses, we need to be turning those people towards services rather than towards law enforcement. So we need to train our law enforcement officers better. We also need to work better with our criminal justice system to offer reentry services to people leaving incarceration. Often it's the people that are leaving incarceration that are at greatest risk for becoming homeless. So we have been working with specialty courts and judicial proceedings such as drug courts and alternatives to ordinary criminal prosecution. And also a dismissal of prosecutions when we can get people proper services. These are some of the best practices that we have come up with to address homelessness. Now, Mr. Kalin recognized the fact that we are an interesting nation with many different governments, a veritable tapestry of governments. And it is true that effective implementation of all of these best practices must occur through several different levels of government, not just the federal government, but also states and local and tribal governments as well. and we work hard to do that. One of the things the federal government has to address this problem, though, so it can meet the covenant's requirements, is that the federal government supports most of these programs through financial incentives at the state and tribal level. For example, in the tribal level, the United States Housing and Urban Development Department spends more than $650 million a year on housing just in Indian country, just on Indian reservations. So we do have the power of the purse and the way to sway incentivized behavior at local levels through that. And to speak more about this, I will turn it over to Mayor Becker of Salt Lake City.
In the area of homelessness, we have taken a particularly strong focus. In fact, I get surprised when I hear people talk about homelessness, even in the same breath as criminalization. Like other communities, or many other communities across the United States, in Utah we adopted a 10-year goal to end homelessness in 2006. Since that time, there has been a 75% reduction in homelessness in the state of Utah and in Salt Lake City. We took a housing first policy, believing that first we need to get people into housing and then provide the kind of wraparound services. We're on target to meet our goal. Particularly maybe relevant is what can happen when we all work together. Last year, President Obama initiated a goal to eliminate veterans' homelessness. We took the approach that we had been using for many years and put more resources to work. Salt Lake City and Phoenix, in a matter of months, in December of last year, successfully completed an end to homelessness among veterans in the United States, in our two cities. Now we see other cities joining in what we called a healthy competition, where we all win from ending homelessness. The key for us is not only applying more resources, which came particularly in additional amounts from the federal government and technical assistance from the federal government, but in all of us working together at the state, at the local, at the federal levels, and among private, profit, and nonprofit sectors.
And finally, in terms of victims victimized, the homeless. I'm just simply baffled by the idea that people can be without shelter in a country and then be treated as criminals for being without shelter. I was reassured at housing programs, I think it was Mayor Becker who referred to that, that are there to try and deal with the homeless problem, but the idea of criminalizing people who don't have shelter is something that I think many of my colleagues might find as difficult as I do to even begin to comprehend.